Make it like real amuse-bouche, not funny, so that everyone after us is like good.
Somebody died.
So we're gonna have like 3 pieces and an intermission, and they're really short, 3 pieces that you can drink before, middle, and after. So it's really not a
that
reading.
makes it funnier.
It's funnier. And it's really not a reading; it's a drinking game.
It's
But so I will MC the first half.
And I will
You'll
MC
see
the second half.
and we'll go. We'll do it. Okay. 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 First up, we have Deborah Goldstein, and she is going to be reading, if you look at your program, Hands and Pants. Deborah Goldstein is the publisher of VillageQ.com, a community site that entertains, informs, and connects LGBT families. Offline, Deborah co-produces Listen to Your Mother, North Jersey, a national spoken word event celebrating motherhood and featuring original pieces by local writers and storytellers. Deborah writes a medley of miscellany on her humor blog, Peaches and Coconuts. She is a contributor in the anthology Scary Mommy's Guide to Surviving the Holidays, and has published pieces on Blog Her, In the Powder Room, The Good Men Project, 50 is the New 50, and Amtrak Ride with Pride. When she writes, her favorite white noise site is coffeetivity.com, where she can choose from a variety of ambient cafe chatter because sitting in her local coffee shop listening to pre-recorded coffee shop noise is so very bad. Welcome, Deborah.
I'm the first one. Like a fluffer. Thank you, Mary. Have you seen my 11-year-old son? He's about 4'10" tall, lanky, spindly even. Kind of cute, but not in the catalog cute kind of way. Definitely not in the ethnically unidentifiable, impossibly gorgeous kind of way. And not even in the 20th century Sears catalog, early 80s, Nordic head topped with bowl haircut kind of way either. His face is actually kind of on the long side, and his nose is more pliable than it is pointy. And his teeth are in desperate need of braces, but a sweet look that can objectively pass for handsome. You may not have noticed his mahogany brown eyes hooded by thick black lashes you'd mistake for false. It's highly likely that you were not paying attention to his playful smirk that precedes a riddle or obscure fun fact, like the fact that camels are very good swimmers. It's true. You may not have focused on his most identifiable features because you may have been distracted by what you thought was the sad result of some sort of accident or birth defect. You may have assumed that he had met with a tragic fate of some kind because you cannot see the hand that is supposed to be at the end of his right arm. It is highly possible that you assumed all sorts of maladies, and I wouldn't put it past you to have quietly blamed his own mother for putting him in harm's way. It's all right. I absolve you the guilt you felt when you judged me for neglecting my son, for not protecting him from what might have been a preventable casualty, imagining that I had done evils upon him during pregnancy, like drinking alcohol or smoking or eating soft cheeses. But if you look a little closer, you'll actually see that his right hand is in fact attached to his arm. I know you had averted your eyes quickly. You didn't want to gawk and call attention to what you thought was a handless arm. You didn't want this child to feel your burning stare as your face fell and immediately exposed your horror and pity. But if you really look, you'll see that he does have a right hand after all. It just so happens that his hand is just out of view because since he turned 11, his hand is always and forever down his pants. Before you continue to make misguided assumptions, he's not actually doing anything down there. Apparently his pockets are insufficient and he requires a bigger space for his tween-age hands. That's what I told myself anyway. The first time I noticed, I was admittedly taken aback, and I did not take the time to consider my reaction. I may have, in retrospect, overreacted. I had yet to master that controlled lady power whisper that you hear on television now. Gone are the days when volume and spit equated to dominance. Today it's all about the whisper, especially for ladies, like Taya Leone, and on Madam Secretary, or Gillian Anderson on The Fall. They both accomplished lady power whispers. One degree of David Duchovny, but I don't think that's relevant. I should have taken a lesson from those two and asked in my whispery, constipated lady power tone, would you be so kind as to remove your hair? But I was shocked, you see, taken off guard. He went from adorable, cuddly boy to slovenly, sweaty, stinky man with hand-in-pants overnight. So instead of using my lady power tone, I shouted, "What's with your hand in your pants?" He jumped and looked at me wide-eyed, unable to figure out why I asked him the question. His 8-year-old brother burst out laughing because he had not yet come of age, the age at which a young man puts his hand in his pants. He laughed because it looked just as odd to him as it did to me. He jerked his hand free of his waistband, and I instantly felt bad for calling attention to something that was clearly innocent. He had no idea that he was even doing it. It was as if his hand had a mind of his own. I don't know, he mumbled, his head down and his homework, both hands in clear view at least for the next 10 minutes before the call of his pants was too strong. I know, he's not the only boy or man to tuck his hand in his pants, but he's my boy, and I wanted to understand why my boy felt the need. It had been years since I actually wished that I had a husband who could teach me the ways of boys. I had to consult my man friend when our small infant baby son started tugging his schwanz so hard and so violently I was sure he was doing permanent damage. But my man friend assured me that there was no such thing as too fast or too furious. On another occasion, another couple of gay moms who had a boy child before we did set an example. They had just taught their son how to use the toilet and insisted he wipe after every wee. There are residuals, they insisted. Shaking is not sufficient. How can it possibly be hygienic not to wipe? It's true, of course, shaking is not sufficient. But when I confessed to a friend that we had adopted that ritual, she and her husband insisted that we cease and desist immediately. Since then, we haven't had much need for male counsel, and since in those 10 years, since those yanking and wiping days, a new source of information had evolved, the internet. The digital encyclopedia of all things mysterious and inexplicable, like crop circles and squirts. The internet would be my husband, and it would tell me what I needed to know. I wouldn't have to give it a BJ to get what I wanted. Alas, my digital husband shot blanks, and I found very little information, scientific or anecdotal, about the act of shoving hands in pants. There are, however, historical references to hands in coats. Napoleon, for one. Was often painted with his hand in his vest or coat. Apparently, according to Francois Nivellon, author of a book of genteel behavior, hand held in meant that you were a man of breeding, displaying boldness tempered by modesty. My son, however, for as well-bred as he is definitely not advertising his gentility. So that was not what was happening there, but I did manage to find an exchange between a man and a woman online where the very same question was posed, and he answered simply, "It's just comfortable." So I tried it. I put my hand down my pants, and I didn't like it. Then again, I might have liked it better if my hand wasn't suffocated between my didn't-used-to-be tight pants and my gelatinous stomach. I wondered if I might find a happier resting place, maybe somewhere else, like on my chest, my fingers locked under an armpit. I found that position to be pleasant. Cozy, even. But once my hand was in place, I I wasn't sure what else to do. My son could do homework, eat, discuss the world events, while one hand was entirely down his pants. I couldn't leave my hand in my armpit for more than 20 seconds. How could I possibly spend countless hours researching hand in pants with one hand? Not to mention the fact that I would not be able to resist drawing my fingers to my nose just to see. So I would do my hand beneath my pit, and something unexpected happened. I wanted to put it back. It was so very warm and comforting, like a womb. Without even thinking, I shoved my hand back in my pants, but this time I circumvented my tummy roll, went around the back, and found the warmest source I could find between my butt cheeks. Felt really good. Too good. I was almost sorry that I had discovered that snug, sweet spot because I knew that it was only a temporary fix. One that I could not enjoy just at any old time, like at the parent-teacher conference or on the subway. You see, ladies with hands in ass is simply not as socially acceptable as man's hands in pants. Remember muffs? In the 1600s, both men and women tucked their hands into muffs. They weren't always furry muffs, because, well, fur didn't always grow on trees. They were made out of silk or satin, and people decorated their muffs with velvet ribbons and lace. They were multi-purpose, you know, not just for hands. People used to store things in their muffs. Ladies were known to carry lap dogs in their muffs. In 18th century Europe, you could actually purchase a muff pistol, named because you could hide these guns in a lady's muff. Those were the days when you could conceal a piece in your muff. Now we have handbags and dog carriers and holsters. Muffs have fallen out of fashion, such a pity really, because beyond the practicality, muffs evidently served a basic human need, the self-soothing need to tuck our hands into a warm place. And so I look the other way when my son does what only comes naturally to boys. And I encourage all of you girls to do what comes naturally to you. Put your hands somewhere warm, your pants, your armpit, and maybe find yourself a furry muff.